A deck that we used to cover quite consistently that hasn't seen any attention in a small while is Thunder Dragons, and it's one that actually wiggled its way onto the tier list, which I found very, very interesting. Now, I do believe a large part of why they were on the tier list was the fact that they utilize quite heavily Bystials, which in this meta, when I'm recording this, which is pre-ban list, tier elements is quite the threat. However, post-ban list, we're still going to see threats like minor sort of tier element engines, as well as Dragon Link and such, try to take over and fill up the space and mantle of the previous King tier elements. So ultimately, what we're going to do is explore over the next couple of videos a few different Thunder Dragon ideas, and this one is based around P.U.N.K. Now, again, we're very familiar with P.U.N.K. in this channel. We cover P.U.N.K. a lot, and this deck itself is not exactly new to the channel either. This was actually our first sort of gateway into P.U.N.K. was P.U.N.K. Thunder Dragons, and then we just sort of moved on from there. Important things to note are, of course, the fact that we're not playing the Wagon, the Field Spell, Trap, Madame Spider, any of that sort of stuff. What we're doing is we're playing as concise an engine as possible to keep the deck as consistent as possible so that we're not over-flooding it with various different mechanics and dead cards and suboptimal draws, because we're already playing the Thunder Dragons themselves, which in combination with most different cards of your deck, like Foxy Toon, Ghost Ogre, Bystials, whatever, in combinations with most cards in your deck, having a Thunder Dragon hand is not that bad a thing. However, in a vacuum, they can be rather inconsistent and don't really do a lot on their own. So you do want to maximize the number of the utility of the other cards in your hand as much as possible, so that you're relying more upon them to get value out of your Thunder Dragons rather than upon the Thunder Dragons themselves. So this is idea number one with the P.U.N.K. deck. Tomorrow we're going to be having a more sort of pure Bystial-esque look at the deck, which I personally think was a little bit better. But this one is definitely unique enough to have a look at, and we have some crazy boards and crazy scenarios. You're able to quite consistently put up like a Colossus Barone or a Colossus Barone Cheng Ying, and you're almost always able to set up a Sprite Elf thanks to the utility of Cross Shape and your Assault Synchron, giving you plenty of level 2 fodder or Link 2 fodder to go into the likes of the Sprite Elf, making your Colossus and whatever other boss monsters untargetable. So we're going to get in, do some replays, we're going to go over some gameplay, going to do a deck profile at the end of the video where we go through the deck card for card. If you're interested in that level of breakdown, absolutely stick around and subscribe if you're new to the channel and you want to see anything more like this. We do videos like this every single day where we're going over different decks, we're live streaming, we're doing whatever, new content every single day, so you can subscribe to see more of it. Like the video if you enjoy what you're watching, or if you just like P.U.N.K. in general. And if you have the means and the desire to show that little bit of extra support, you can of course join as a member. That is very, very appreciated. Members are helping to drive the channel even more, and I really appreciate anyone who does. So if you have the resources, the time, and the will to do so, the option is available. But I'll stop rambling. Let's get into the gameplay. Alright, getting into game one here, opening up with a fairly decent hand. We of course have the Tunings, the Yaman, Roar, Hawk, everything in our opening hand, so this is pretty solid. Gonna summon out the Yaman as we normally do, going into a Foxy Toon dropping itself, as well as the Thunder Dragon Roar to summon out the Deer Note. Going now into the Chaos Ruler, this is where it diverges from a regular P.U.N.K. strategy. We're going Chaos Ruler over, of course, the Jam Dragon. Deer Note is going to bring back a monster. Now, the monster that this brings back is entirely dependent upon what you want to do at that very moment. You can bring back Yaman if you fancy a Sticky Chem Punisher. You can bring back a level 8 if you fancy going into a Hope Harbinger. Or, it doesn't really matter when you bring, if you plan to using them to go into an engine card like your Cross Shape or your Masquerena. Right, so there's a whole bunch of different options. Rarely does it matter because you normally want to extend via links first. But something to think about. We're going to get to grab a Baldric from the top of our deck here, sending the Saronir to the graveyard. Saronir triggering to send another monster to the grave, just getting rid of more bricks. Using the Hawk, bringing back the Roar, we're now going to use the Assault Synchron, summoning out the Assault Synchron, so now we can go into the Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon here is going to be able to try and bring back an Assault Synchron from grave, but unfortunately our opponent has the Bystial Magnamut, banishing our Assault Synchron before we can resummon it off the Axel Synchro. That is going to limit our end board quite a bit. We would have liked to have that resolved so we could do quite a lot more. We are going to go into Cross Sheep here. Cross Sheep, then we're going to use the effect the Chaos Ruler Banish 2 to bring it back. So now we got our 2 level 8s on board. We're going to use these 2 to go into the Hope Harbinger. Hope Harbinger going in the zone of the Cross Sheep. Now we're going to use the Dark to go into Colossus here, summoning it to the other zone, so our Cross Sheep can bring back a monster from the graveyard. Thunder Dragon Dark, of course, searching our deck for another Thunder Dragon related card like Fusion. we're able to grab the fusion spell from the deck, and Crossheap's going to bring back Ziyama from the grave. We're going to use these two now to go into Sprite Elf. So now we have an untargetable Hope Harbinger and Colossus. We also bring back a Maxi, sort of just because if it survives the turn, we may be able to use it for an extender. That's fine. Magnomet does not get to add a card from deck to hand during the end phase, thanks to Colossus. Colossus locks them out of searching their deck for cards. They can only add cards from their deck to their hand by drawing them. No searching allowed. Hope Harbinger not only gives us a spell negate, but it also gives us battle redirection. They cannot just swing into our Elf, and both our monsters, thanks to Elf, are untargetable. So again, would have been better if we resolved Axel Synchro to get the Assault Synchron back. We will likely would have had a Baron de Fleur or a Ching Ying, or both instead of Hope Harbinger. But again, we're not in a terrible position here either, right? That's why we play it. Going into our opponent's turn, they have the Super Poly. They're going to drop 2, getting rid of our Colossus to bring out Predaplant Dragostapelia. Unfortunately for them, the Dragostapelia cannot negate our Hope Harbinger so long as Sprite Elf is on the board. And so basically, we're just going to be testing our opponent here. We are going to hit that Lubellion with the Baldric, which is going to stop them from basically bringing it out to the field. But they do get to grab a Saronir. Maybe we should have asked that, but it's fine. It ends up working out for the better. They're going to go for Alibra here on the normal summon into the battle phase. They didn't read the Hope Harbinger. No one ever does. They didn't read, and now we either redirect their battle in. They of course lose their monster. They're gonna go for Branded in Red. We're trying to bring back the Alibur. Perhaps this was even part of their plan. Maybe their plan was to have this happen so they could use the Branded in Red, bait it out to negate our monster, and then in main phase 2 they were gonna go for Branded Fusion, but we had Ash Blossom. So yeah, yikes. So yeah, we were comfortable negating the Branded in Red with the Hope Harbinger because we knew we had Ash, and their only ever play was Branded Fusion, so it worked out. There you go, great game. Shows off the versatility even in the face of interruption against a top tier deck. This is pre-ban list as well. Not that the ban list has made a massive difference to Branded in my opinion. I don't think Branded Fusion to 1 is that big of a deal, but either way, it was pre-ban list, and there you go. And the game number 2. Already getting into game 2 here. We're going to be opening up a decent hand here, very similar to before, although we do have the Deer Note in hand. We get to, unfortunately here, and I didn't even notice this at the time, we pitch our Hawk to the grave off of tuning, which is actually not great for us. That's pretty bad actually. But we can still recover from it. It just does cost us a little bit of resources. We're going to go Deer Note from the hand this time using its effect. Now we're going to go into the Chaos Ruler, much like before. This is the focal point of your strategy and how you generate the majority of your resources by filling up your graveyard with useful cards, as well as usually grabbing a useful one from deck to hand as well. This time we bring back the Ogre Dance from the graveyard. Again, it usually doesn't make a massive difference which one you grab back. Looking at the top cards, we're going to grab ourselves a Magnomet. Now we're going to go Gold Sark. Gold Sark is going to banish a Thunder Dragon Dark from our deck, so Dark will then get searching our deck for another Thunder Dragon card. We're going to grab Roar, because Roar can discard itself to add from graveyard back to hand the Thunder Dragon Hawk. Hawk then is what enables our Thunder Dragon plays, but we're going to hold off and summon the Magnomet first. Using Magnomet, we're going to search our deck for another dragon at the end phase, going into Assault Synchron for the Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon. Very key part of the deck this is, because it gives you a extender as well as a level 2 tuner, which is very useful. We're going to go Crossheap. Crossheap being an awesome card here. Bringing back the Dark. We're going to use these two to go into Baron de Fleur, summoning it to the far zone there. You do usually want to keep this middle zone clear for your Colossus, just so you have the maximum amount of versatility off of a Sprite Elf and its protection. Going into Colossus here, triggering Crossheap, bringing back the Assault Synchron, so now we can use these two to go into Sprite Elf. And this is a fairly typical board where you're able to use these guys to essentially summon out a protected Elf and Baron. Bringing out Chaos Ruler, we're able to bring back our Assault Synchron once more, using these two in a Synchro Summon for the Ching Ying. So now we got Baron, Ching Ying, Colossus, and protection from our Elf, as well as a Bestial in hand. This is a pretty solid end board. So now our opponent's going to be playing Kashtira. Out comes the Unicorn, Lullaby of Obedience, paying 2,000 life points, and Instant L. They can't use Unicorn to search. And again, super quick replay, but let me talk about why that was a super quick replay. Can't use Unicorn to search for Birth. Can't use Fenrir to search for another, like a Rise Heart. They can't get rid of their monster for an extender unless they have the likes of Instant Contact or anything in hand. Lullaby of Obedience was the icing on the cake. Lots of people using Lullaby of Obedience, immediately calling Kashtira or Fenrir, and we're not running it. So if anyone's running Lullaby of Obedience against you, it's basically just sniping a card out of their hand for free, costing them 2,000 life points. So, you know, I'll take that dub all day long. So not only were they locked down by the Colossus and weren't able to search their deck, we also had the fact that we have Baron de Fleur, which is an Omni negate, so if they happen to hard draw anything powerful, they were instantly done. Cheng Ying is going to be able to react to any of their attempts to banish it from our field or extra deck by banishing cards of their own, which is awesome, as well as reducing all of their attack points down and making them so small that they can't in fact actually get over our monsters. Plus Baron and Colossus were both immune to targeting, so it's not as if they could just fin rear to target one of our monsters, because we'd beat them, because we're untargetable. Pretty quick game, pretty solid game, just wanted to explain that, and again I just thought the opening board and everything there was closer to what you normally do. Of course, the Hope Harbinger is a nice fallback plan for if things don't go according to plan, if they negate your Axel in particular, that does come up quite a bit. But normally, if you can play through, or you don't get interrupted too heavily, or you don't get hit at certain times, you can put up this kind of board relatively easily. But anyways, let's get into the next game. Already getting into game 2 here, we are going second, which is very unfortunate. Our opponent's going to go for Prosperity here. Now, the thing about this deck in particular, we do have the Maxi at the very least, but it is going to get negated by Ash Blossom. The thing about this deck, especially the Punk version, more than the other version we're going to talk about tomorrow, it is a little bit prone to interruption, and you can't always play through things the best. We are going up against Exo Sisters here, which isn't a top tier deck. This is a rogue strategy, a fairly powerful rogue strategy, but rogue nonetheless. We revealed a Vadis there in the top 5 of the deck. They're going to search their deck later on here, going in the Mikalis. Mikalis would get them a banish if we controlled anything to banish. They're going to go Mikalis, detaching Ellis, search their deck for Returnia. Okay, so they searched for Returnia. They grabbed Marfa off of Prosperity. They didn't grab Vadis from the deck, and they didn't search for it at all. So theoretically, the only face down that we know here is Returnia. We're going to go for Ogre Dance. Ogre Dance discarding itself. We're going to grab a Ziyama from deck. We actually get hit with an Ash Blossom here. And this is where things likely go downhill for us. Called by the Grave. So Called by the Grave is a risky one to play against Exo Sisters. However, I did the math. He has a Vadis in deck, definitely. We know it's in his deck because we revealed it off of Prosperity, shuffled it back, he didn't choose it, and he hasn't drawn any cards. He searched for Returnia, meaning he hasn't realistically added Vadis from deck to hand. Most players only play one Vadis. This guy happened to be playing 2, and he just happened to open it. I mean, ultimately, like, what do you want me to do? We tried our best. Called by the Grave is going to banish the monster from the graveyard, so our Ogre Dance is going to resolve. Is it worth it? Absolutely not. However, our deck is very graveyard reliant, so Exo Sisters naturally do have a pretty big advantage over your board. Exo Sisters being a pretty big problem. Going into Mikalis here off of the first Exo Sister, then using Irene to go into the Jibreen. So what is this now? Basically, he gets a banish here, he gets a negate here, and he's got double banish here. Double banish, triple banish, and a negate. That's what's currently on his field. That is insane. We have 4 cards in hand. Normal summon Xiamen, just because we're going to give it a try. He's going to negate us off of the Jibreen. That's fine, makes total sense. We don't resolve this effect. We're going to use Foxy Tune, activate its effect. We're going to summon out the Deer Note from deck, getting hit with a Mikalis, and we're going to go Assault Synchron just because. Then he goes Returnia. Returnia banishes both of our monsters, and GG's. Wiped our whole hand out. So the deck is a little prone to interruption, quite prone to interruption, although that is a rather rough situation for most decks to be in. So, you know, it is what it is, but I wanted to show off at least one sort of big losing scenario, and you can extrapolate these same results out to a number of different strategies that are either A, particularly good with graveyard hate, or B, are able to put up several interruptions, board removals, things like that. The deck will suffer with in a similar capacity, right? So let's get into the deck profile. We'll talk about the cards, we'll talk about some of the strong points and some of the weak points, and go from there. Alrighty, so this is the deck. This is a more sort of aggressive aggro version of the Punk Thunder Dragons that a lot of other people are playing. Not that a lot of people are playing Punk Thunder Dragons. The Bestial Thunder Dragon deck definitely seems to be the preferred option, and after testing both, I would have to agree. This deck does play a solid amount of Bestials, in fact quite a lot of Bestials, but the main focus of the deck definitely falls upon the Punk cards. Now, what exactly is the value of the Punk cards in this context? Well, it gives you a very, very significant chance of going into your Chaos Ruler right off the bat. Chaos Ruler, of course, is going to be a massive card for enabling a ton of resources. So the whole point of the Xiamen loop is that your deck doesn't really have any normal summons. So you're not going to miss using your normal summon on this, but basically you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ways of getting into a 1-card combo that will result in you summoning out your Chaos Ruler. Chaos Ruler, of course, being a pretty nuts card. You check the top 5 of your cards of your deck, send them all to the graveyard, but you get to add 1 Lighter Dark monster among them to your hand. Add a Assault Synchron, add a Bestial, add a Thunder Dragon, add any of these cards, or even a Hawk even, from your deck to your hand, basically from the top 5 milled off a Chaos Ruler. It's a level 8 that brings itself back, as well as the Deer Note upon the conclusion of your Synchro Summon is going to give you back either a level 3 or a level 8. So basically you end in a position where you've got a level 8 Synchro on board, you've got a level 3 Mont Tuner, or a level 8 non-tuner on board, as well as having an additional Dark Monster on hand, like a Bestial, Assault Synchron, or otherwise a useful card. As well as a bunch of additional cards in your graveyard, which is where you really want to be seeing play. So because of that, the deck does have a lot of inherent value, and if it gets going, it can really get going. But by that same token, by replacing all of your usual Thunder Dragon starters with the P.U.N.K cards, it does leave the combo being rather linear, and it can result in your deck losing quite easily to 1 or 2 interruptions, which isn't exactly the greatest position to be in. There are certain hands and situations in which you can play around and get through that sort of thing, which is why we're playing Assault Synchron, because that does contribute somewhat to that problem fixing, although it does in and of itself cause its own problems, so it's not a perfect solution, but it is one that we were using and having a lot of fun with. So let's go through the deck card for card, just so we're all on the same page and we all know what we're looking at. Starting off with our Maxi package, of course, triple Maxi, triple Ash, double Call By, and singular Crossout. All of these cards designed to utilize and negate Maxi to the easiest possible extent. Of course, Crossout and Call By generically being able to negate Ash and Veiler and things like that as well is pretty useful. But it's primarily here to stop Maxi, because Maxi, if you don't have a way to negate it, is an automatic loss. So yeah, gotta be careful. In terms of our tuning package, we're running 3 Assault Synchron and 3 tuning. Assault Synchron can special summon itself to the field by paying 700 life points, but you're locked in the Synchro so long as it's face up. It can also, if a face-up Dragon Synchro monster you control is tributed or banished, you can banish this card from your graveyard to re-summon that monster. Tuning basically adds a Synchron tuner from deck to hand, like the Assault Synchron, and then mills a card, not once per turn. This card is pretty incredible because as a level 2 tuner that summons itself, it allows you, alongside a Bestial, to go into very easy access for the Chaos Ruler. Its secondary effect also comes up with the Chaos Ruler, because whenever this card uses its effect to revive itself, which we'll get to in a minute, it then banishes itself when it next leaves the field. That will trigger an Assault Synchron in your graveyard to banish the Assault Synchron to re-summon your Chaos Ruler back to the field for what could potentially be a third time that turn. So both effects are very useful in the context. It being a level 2 also not only enables the easy summoning of, but also allows a more effective utilization of the Sprite Elf, which allows you to is summon using a level rank or link 2 monster, as well as being able to bring back level 2s every single turn. You saw in the gameplay how that allowed us to go into certain level 10 synchros. We've got the P.U.N.K package next, which is of course 3 Xiamen, 1 Sharkusai, 1 Deer Note, 3 Foxy Toon, double Ghost Ogre, and double Emergency Teleport. So the way this package works essentially is it's all focused around Xiamen. You're going to go one of 2 routes down your Chaos line, down your P.U.N.K line to get into your Chaos cards. You're either going to normal summon the Xiamen using its effect to search for the Foxy Toon, and you're going to use Foxy Toon to special summon out Deer Note. Then you have Foxy Toon and Deer Note. Okay. Other way you might do it is if you can special summon your Xiamen through E-Tele or through Foxy Toon, you will special summon the Xiamen, pay 600 life points to search your deck for the Sharkusai, normal summon the Sharkusai, and fuse the Sharkusai with your Xiamen to bring out the Rising Carp. Rising Carp will then tribute itself to summon out a Xiamen and a Deer Note. There you go, and then from henceforth, the Xiamen and Deer Note goes in the Chaos Ruler, blah blah blah. The rest of the turn goes identically, regardless of how you opened. So it basically just depends. If you just raw open Xiamen and you can normal summon it, perfect. Just do that. That's easy dubs. If you don't just have the Xiamen in hand and you have to special summon it from deck using E-Tele or Foxy Toon, you can. If you summon off E-Tele, you can just search Foxy Toon and go straight into Deer Note. That's fine. But if you have to summon it out off your Foxy Toon, so Foxy Toon's the only P.U.N.K you have in hand, right? Let's say that. Foxy Toon can discard itself as well as an additional card in your hand to special summon any punk monster from your deck. So what you do is you use Foxy Toon to summon Xiamen, Xiamen search for Sharkusai, normal Sharkusai, fusion in the Rising Carp, and then Rising Carp contribute itself to summon any 2 different punks from deck. It summons out Xiamen and Deer Note. Full combo. So that's the only difference with the Punk engine. How you go into it can differ slightly. So with the most of the cards, if you just have a Xiamen or an E-Telly or a Ghost Ogre, which just discards itself to search for Xiamen basically, if you have any of those cards, then you just normal Xiamen. If the only punk you have in hand is Foxy Toon, then you Foxy Toon in the Xiamen, use this to search Sharkusai, blah blah blah. Do the combo we just talked about. So yeah, that's the difference, and that's why we're running 3 of here, absolutely. If you didn't want to run the Sharkusai or the Rising Carp, if you wanted to cut those 2, you would definitely cut Foxy Toon down to 1. By itself, without the Sharkusai, it is not full combo. It does not do the combo and is only useful if you already have a Xiamen on board. But because we're playing the Sharkusai and because we're playing the Rising Carp, we can turn this card into full combo, which means it's definitely worth playing 3 of. Of course, Deer Note, of course, is the other big part of the Punk deck. It can special summon itself from hand by revealing itself and another Punk in hand. You summon one, ditch the other, which is pretty handy in terms of getting itself out onto the board. It means that you're not sort of reliant upon summoning it from deck, and it's not completely useless in hand, because if you have it in hand, instead of searching for Foxy Toon and Foxy Toon summoning it from deck, you just search for Foxy Toon and then reveal Foxy Toon off of Deer Note and then just summon a Deer Note, right? So it's the exact same process, you're just using a different effect, basically. It's fundamentally the exact same though, and it's primarily useful for its second effect, which will allow you to, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, bring back any non-level 5 Punk monster, summon it to the field. Pretty straightforward stuff. You've got your 3 and your 5, you go into your 8, that triggers the Chaos Ruler and Deer Note will bring back any of your other punks. Pretty awesome effect, excellent card. And then we've already talked about these guys. Foxy Toon discards itself and a card to special a punk from deck. Ogre Dance will discard itself to grab a punk from deck. And then E-Telly will summon any level 3 psychic monster from your deck to the field. That'll be your Xiamen. Or your Sharkusai in a pinch, but normally your Xiamen. So Punk package really isn't all that complicated. It's a whole bunch of cards, but they are all aiming at doing the exact same thing. We've got the Thunder Dragon cards. Triple Dark, Single Hawk, Double Roar, Single Fusion, and a single Gold Sark. So Dark, all of these Thunder Dragons have an effect that activates when they're A, sent from the field to the graveyard or banished, is effect number 1, and effect number 2 is when they're discarded. You can discard them to activate the other effect. So their discard effects. Thunder Dragon Dark, as a quick effect, can discard itself to add another Thunder Dragon Dark from deck to hand, which in theory sounds pretty bad, and you're right in most cases. You're not going to use that effect super often, but there are 2 main situations in which that effect is useful. 3 main situations in which it's useful. Number 1, the most prominent situation in which that effect is useful, is working alongside your Thunder Dragon Titan. This card, whenever you activate the effect of a Thunder in hand, can pop an opponent's card without targeting. So obviously, this being a quick effect gives you a quick play pop with your Titan. That's the most prominent effect, and likely the design behind the card. In the second scenario in which it's useful is if you're going second. You usually just sort of wait until your opponent's end phase, and then you can discard Dark to add another Dark to hand. Not only does that remove a Thunder Dragon Dark from your deck, it also means that you now have a Dark monster in your graveyard to trigger off your Bystials, to trigger off whatever. It helps sort of thin your deck out as well as grant you additional resources. And this card, all of the Thunder Dragons can only use one of their effects per turn, so you want to make sure that when you discard it, you're doing so on a turn in which you intend not to use its other effect. And its other effect is the more useful of them. And the third situation in which you would want to use Thunder Dragon Dark's effect is if you're in a position throughout a game where you're able to put a Thunder monster onto the board, or you're no longer in need of a search, but you're able to summon a Thunder monster out either through Tribute Summon, Revival, even just Link Summoning in the Sprite Elf, which is Thunder. You can just discard this card to add another Thunder Dragon Dark to hand, purely for the sake of meeting the conditions of summoning Colossus, which can be special summoned by tributing a Thunder type effect monster during the turn on which you activate a Thunder effect in hand. So sometimes you want to just use the discard to quickly proc off that condition so you can very quickly summon your Colossus. That doesn't happen super often. You normally want to use its secondary effect, but the first effect does have a number of uses. Its secondary effect, whenever this card is either banished from anywhere or sent from the field to the graveyard, you get to search your deck for any Thunder Dragon related card. Your 99% of situations going to use that effect, and you're going to use it to search specifically for your Thunder Dragon Hawk, which we're going to talk about next. This card can discard itself to special summon back a Thunder Dragon that is either banished or in your graveyard. So that gives you very easy access to your Colossus, because not only is it A, putting a Thunder effect monster on your field, it is also B, activating the effect of a Thunder in hand itself. That automatically then meets the conditions for your Colossus. That's why we normally use the banishment effect of Dark to search for Hawk. This card also has an effect that activates when it's either banished or sent from field to graveyard, in that you can basically mulligan your hand, shuffle a bunch of cards back, and draw that same number of cards. You're not going to use that effect very often. But yeah, it's primarily here, almost exclusively here for its first effect, which is why we're only playing one of it. It being a light attribute monster is also kind of helpful. And lastly, 2 copies of Thunder Dragon Dark. Not lastly, but next. This card can discard itself to add a Thunder Dragon card from your graveyard or banish pile back to your hand. Excellent for recycling Hawk or recycling Thunder Dragon Fusion later into the game, which is a really solid effect. Although its secondary effect is actually more powerful than that, in that when this card is banished or sent from field to graveyard, you can special summon a Thunder Dragon monster from your deck in defense, but it gets bounced back to your hand during the end phase. That effect is phenomenal, not only for ensuring the summoning of your Colossus, but also for extending your Link plays, your Synchro plays, by putting a monster either a level 5 on the board to work with your level 3 tuners if your Zeoma gets interrupted for any reason, or potentially a level 6 onto the board to work alongside your Assault Synchron to go into additional level 8 Synchros. So that effect is definitely very, very versatile. You'll normally use Roar to search your deck for Thunder Dragon Dark, so that you can link Thunder Dragon Dark off to send it to the graveyard, to trigger this card's effect to search your deck for Hawk, and then it comes full circle because Hawk will bring one of your dragons back, then you contribute that dragon off to go into your Colossus. So it's just like a big circle. But all of them are very powerful cards. Gold Sark is a part of the Thunder Dragon engine because it literally just banishes a card from your deck, which allows you to automatically proc either your Thunder Dragon Dark Search or your Thunder Dragon Roar Summon effect directly from the deck. Very, very, very powerful card, and one of your best starters in the deck far and away. Thunder Dragon Fusion. This card, you can fusion summon a Thunder monster from your extra deck by shuffling back from your graveyard field and banish pile the materials needed. You're going to use this card primarily to summon out your Thunder Dragon Titan, and we're going to play 2 copies of Titan because we can loop this card very effectively. We can basically banish this card from the graveyard to add a Thunder monster from the deck to the hand. We're going to add Thunder Dragon Roar. Thunder Dragon Roar can discard itself to add Thunder Dragon Fusion back from the banish pile to your hand. And just like that, you can use Thunder Dragon Fusion to shuffle back into your extra deck. You have Thunder Dragon Titan, if you've already used one, as well as potentially any other Thunder effects you want to recycle to bring out another Titan. And what that effectively means is that you can continually, if they deal with a Titan, you just add the Thunder Dragon Fusion back, use it to summon another Titan by shuffling back the first. And then you're exactly back where you started, where next turn you can do the same thing and you just loop it, and it helps win certain grind games. That strategy is a little bit more of a relic. It's not too relevant nowadays. And if you really wanted to get rid of Thunder Dragon Fusion, you can. There are certain hands and situations where it doesn't feel very good, and maybe you do want to get rid of it. But again, there are that same number of games on the flip side where you can win these sort of grindy games or these longer games because, and only because, you're able to utilize Thunder Dragon Titan. So you can play it if you want. I really like it. I think it would be a real shame to take it out, but I also understand the appeal of taking it out. There are definitely certain situations in which you do not want to see this card, so I totally get it. That's the Thunder Dragon aspect of the deck. We've already talked about P.U.N.K, and then we got Bystials. Bystials are extremely powerful in Thunder Dragons, and it doesn't take a genius to work out why. They summon themselves to the field by banishing light or dark monsters from your graveyard. If only there were a set of dark monsters that really wanted to be banished. So these guys not only have their own effects and are very useful cards, they are also key in triggering off your Thunder Dragons, not only in ideal situations, but also in suboptimal situations where you're unable to do so through your regular vanilla effects. So being able to banish these guys is automatically really good. They are, of course, level 6 monsters, which means they can work alongside your Assault Synchron to very easily go into level 8 Synchros, which, of course, is a very key aspect of the deck, with the Chaos Ruler and Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon being 2 of the best combo starter extender type cards in the whole deck. So their level is very relevant, their attribute is very relevant, The fact that they banish the summon themselves is very relevant, and they all also have individually neat effects. Magnamut will search your deck for another dragon during the end of the turn, grab another Bestial. Saronir will send a Bestial or branded card from deck to graveyard. You're not going to use that one too often, but you can. Drissworm, when sent from field to grave, will send a special summon monster your opponent controls to the graveyard as well, taking one down with it, kamikaze style. And Baldric, when your opponent special summons a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, or Link monster, you can tribute another light or dark monster you control to target one of those monsters and banish it. So you've got that little extra deck removal right there. So all of those, very, very solid cards. And that's pretty much the entire main deck, right? Yep, we got everything. And that's it. It's really not that complicated. The deck does not have any... The rigid combo line in the deck is P.U.N.K. And unlike in regular decks, your combo line doesn't bring you from the beginning to the end of your turn. The combo is to give you as much resources as possible to play with. The idea isn't that you're going to end on this crazy board because of your P.U.N.K. cards, or not directly because of them, but rather that your P.U.N.K. combo going into the Chaos Ruler and enabling the recursion of the Deer Note is going to put you in a position where you can utilize your available resources in a creative manner to establish a board presence that your opponent will not be able to overcome. Which, while it is very effective going first and you do have an entire range of options and your deck becomes very hard for your opponent to predict, it does also mean that you don't always get what you want, or maybe that the deck is very easy to misplay with, or you maybe don't think things through all the way. So it definitely does leave room open to interpretation, and where there is interpretation, there will be mistakes, and practice will be required. So don't expect to pick this deck up and just automatically start blasting fools left, right, and center. You will brick, or you will see hands in which you have perceived yourself to have bricked, because you're maybe not thinking about it in the right way, or you're not being creative with the resources available to you. Or maybe you just bricked. Maybe you get impermed on your P.U.N.K. and you didn't have any other plays. It just happens. It's that type of deck where it rewards creativity and problem solving, but can punish a lack of such, rather than most decks where they just have a combo, right? Let's talk about the extra deck briefly. Of course, the main boss monster of any Thunder Dragon deck is the main man himself, Thunder Dragon Colossus. Colossus, as long as it's face up on your side of the field, your opponent will not be able to add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them. That locks down their ability to search. That works particularly great to an extent against Branded. It's really, really good against Sprite. It completely prevents Flow and the Reeds from playing the game. It's decent against Exosister because they can't search off of their Pax or their Mikalis or their Caspatel or whatever. Not unoutable depending upon their opening hand, but it definitely can hurt their damn feelings a little bit. So Colossus definitely holds a nice place. However, it is not the one card win condition that it used to be. So we have to think more creatively to back it up using a range of other powerful boss monsters, which is what we're going to talk about in a moment. We have already talked about, to an extent, Titan, where you can pop a card your opponent controls non-targeting anytime you activate a Thunder effect in hand. Now, what I should clarify about both of these cards is that they can both protect themselves from destruction. Colossus from any form of destruction by banishing a Thunder card from the deck, or from the graveyard, sorry. And Titan can protect itself specifically from effect-based destruction by banishing any 2 cards from your graveyard, including just generic spells or whatever. It's not limited by the type of card, just the value, but it cannot protect itself from battle destruction. Which, I mean, makes sense. You know, it's got 3,200 attack and defense. Your boy isn't small, right? It takes a big card to swing over this one, so it makes total sense that it doesn't have any built-in battle protection, and it often doesn't come up. And we got Raising Carp, which again is part of our fallback Sharkusai plan in terms of ensuring our Foxy Tune can enable a 1-card combo. This card will be summoned off your Sharkusai and contribute itself to summon out Xiamen and Deer Note directly from the deck. It's just here as a combo piece. We got Chaos Ruler. We've talked about this card a lot, even just so far. When summoned, you get to execute the top 5 cards of your deck, grab a light or dark among them, the rest go to the graveyard. Very, very powerful effect. It can also bring itself back from the graveyard by banishing a light and a dark monster from the grave or hand. So it's a recurring level 8 Synchro monster that can even be recurred a third time, like we talked about off of Assault Synchron. So this card will continually come back. Your opponent cannot deal with it. It will always come back. It's a real pain. Next we got the Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon. On summon, you will special summon back a level 2 or lower tuner from your graveyard, which is exclusively your Assault Synchron. So the idea of this card is that on summon, it's going to bring back the Assault Synchron, which is going to facilitate the either link summoning into Sprite Elf right away, or it's going to facilitate a level 10 synchro, or potentially some sort of extension depending upon what your board is. Like I said, the deck doesn't have a rigid combo once you've completed the P.U.N.K line, because the whole idea is that here's a bunch of resources, have fun, go nuts, do what you can. And the Stardust Dragon really plays into that idea by simply giving you the ability to bring back some of your most important resources, and that is your tuners. Tuners are super important, especially in a deck like this, where you play so many powerful level 10 synchro monsters. Starting, of course, with Baron de Fleur, one of the most generic and most powerful level 10 synchro monsters that the game has or likely will see for a long time. Once while face up, it has a generic Omni Negate and Destroy, and during each of your turns it has the effect to once per turn pop a card your opponent controls. Pretty straightforward card. Generic Omni Negate is awesome. Being able to pop a card once per turn is also pretty good. 30,000 attack makes it a little bit difficult to get over, especially considering this deck actually does modulate attack points a fair bit. So yeah, Baron de Fleur, definitely a very powerful card, and normally the one you're going to begin with because it keeps you safe from very generic cards like Evenly Matched, Nibiru, so on and so forth. Then we got the Sovereign, which is normally your second bet. This card, for each banished card, will gain 100 attack and defense while reducing all of your opponent's monsters by that same amount. If it would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish a card from your graveyard instead, and if a card is banished while this card is face up, you will then get to choose a card your opponent controls and one in their graveyard, and banish both without targeting. So this is a very integral form of removal for many very problematic boss monsters, such as Avramax. Otherwise, you wouldn't really have a very efficient out to that card. In fact, I can't really think of an out at all other than a counter Avramax, which usually doesn't work. So, yeah, you would really sort of, to get around an Avramax without Cheng Ying requires some extreme setup where you're going to go like Titan and Baron and then attack with Titan, and then when he boosts you use Baron's Negate to stop the attack boost on the Avramax. It's messy as hell. I would rather just banish it, right? It's not that complicated. Plus, you can trigger that effect quite handily through the usage of Bestials, which was what makes it even more useful in this deck compared to most. Most decks play it as a floodgate and a reactionary card, but not every deck that plays it has the ability to proactively banish a card to trigger that removal effect, whereas this deck does, in the form of our Bestials. So absolutely, Cheng Ying is an amazing card. We got the Chaos Angel, which is decent in this version of the deck. We didn't actually use it, and I don't use it much, but we use this card a lot more in the Bestial version of the deck alongside the Bestial Lubellion. So if you wanted to use this card in particular, you might want to catch our next video coming out about just regular Bestial Thunder Dragons, where the Bestial Lubellion alongside your Assault Synchron can bring this card out to its full potential significantly more often. But what is its full potential? Well, first and foremost, one of the most important and interesting aspects of the card is you don't actually need a tuner. If the tuner that you're using for the card, or sorry, if one of the monsters that you would use for its synchro summon would be a light or a dark monster, you can use that monster as the non-tuner, so long as of course the other monster still meets the light or dark monster condition. Meaning you can actually summon this card without any tuners, which is especially useful with the likes of Batteryman Solar, Thunder Dragon Roar, all of these useful cards that can be used to set this card up. In this version of the deck though, we don't have a ton of ways to facilitate that. It's primarily through the usage of our level 8 P.U.N.K monsters alongside an Assault Synchron or potentially a Chaos Ruler and an Assault Synchron. So we don't really take advantage of that more creative aspect of the card, but at least not in this version of the deck, but it is something worth considering. On summon, you also get to target a card on the field and banish it. Quick play, not quick play removal, but on summon removal, which is pretty awesome. And its most important facet is that it gains up to 2 different effects depending on the attributes of the monsters used for its summon. So if a light monster is used for its summon, any synchro monster you control is unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effects. Which is nuts. Very, very similar protection to the likes of Psychic and Punisher, although it is more exclusive to monsters. But that is still an incredible amount of protection to be applied to all of your synchro monsters, including Baron de Fleur, Supreme Sovereign, Chaos Ruler, if you can put this guy up even before your Chaos Ruler, which in our Bestial Thunder Dragon video we actually do on more than one occasion. So this card is absolutely nuts. And its a secondary effect is nothing to be scoffed at either. Monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. That is actually pretty impactful when you consider we're going to be using Sprite Elf as well as IP Masquerena in a lot of our end boards, and they're quite squishy cards. A lot of people will force these guys to use their effects simply by entering the battle phase and threatening to destroy them by battle. The Chaos Angel removes your opponent's ability to bluff the removal of these cards, thus they can no longer force you to activate them at suboptimal times because they cannot destroy them by battle. You're not threatened, you do not care. So it enables situations where your opponent would like you to do certain things or would like to force you into doing certain things, but this card then gives you the ability to resist without giving up any additional resources, without activating any additional cards, without using up any additional effects. Just passively by existing, this card prevents your opponent from doing that, which is pretty awesome. Psychic and Punisher. Psychic and Punisher, our level 11 boss monster. We don't summon this card a ton, but you definitely can if you want to. It is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects so long as your life points match or are below your opponent's. You can also pay 1,000 life points to essentially banish any monsters you control and any card your opponent controls, which is very useful spot removal, as well as of course being able to gain the difference in your life points as attack points at the beginning of any battle phase, making him absolutely massive. We got the Hope Harbinger, which is a once per turn spell negate. You negate the spell and suck it up. You absorb their spell card, which is a very effective form of especially in the new meta. At the time of recording, the Branded Fusion was still allowed at 2 copies, but in the new ban list, it is now allowed only at 1. So if you can negate and steal their Branded Fusion, you're putting them in a very suboptimal situation. And lastly, this isn't a generic link package. I normally would call it that, but this link package has actually been specially crafted to function alongside this deck. So one of the most important assets here is Cross Shape. Cross Shape, it has a whole bunch of effects, but let's focus on the most important effect, which is that when a fusion monster is summoned to one of the zones it points to, you get to bring back a level 4 lower monster in the graveyard. Again, I keep referring back, you need tuners. You need to recycle your tuners as much as you can to get as much value out of these cards as possible. It can also do some attack modulation depending on whether or not a Synchro or Exceed monster is in the other slot, a Synchro boosting your field by 700 and an Exceed reducing theirs by 700. But primarily here for the fusion effect. This card being a Link 2 that can be summoned off of any 2 monsters also means that you have almost guaranteed access to Sprite Elf using this as material. Sprite Elf of course protecting anything it points to from targeting, which means you have now an untargetable field of boss monsters, and once per turn being able to bring back a level Link or rank 2 monster. That is most useful in recovering your Assault Synchron in a lot of situations where you want to continue extending. Past that, it's not really super useful. It is definitely something you use to extend your board using Assault Synchron, so it's definitely nothing to be scoffed at, but the card's primary function in this deck is definitely for that targeting protection. We've got Masquerena to quick play Link Summon during your opponent's turn into none other than Mekhnate Crusadia Avramax. Avramax will basically be untargetable, indestructible, and your opponent will not be able to destroy it by battle because it will gain attack points equal to their attack points whenever it battles, and your opponent cannot attack anything but this card so long as you control this card. So that's the full deck list. A little bit of a longer deck profile than what we're used to here, but the deck can be a little bit complicated, so I wanted to give it as a very good breakdown. I couldn't think of the word I was going to say. I was going to say acute, and that wasn't correct. But anyways, that's the deck list. If you're interested in these types of breakdowns, let me know down below. I appreciate that not everyone probably watched this far into the video, but if you have, then props. You're doing me a favor. So if you have got this far, subscribe if you haven't, like the video if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.